Sergio Perez had another really bad weekend in Canada that ended early on Saturday when he got kicked out of the first part of qualifying for the second race in a row and had a second crash where he couldn't finish in the last two races in Monaco. In Montreal, on top of that, Perez just saw his contract get made longer for 2 years, keeping his seat until the end of 2026. But is this really what his contract says after Horner's latest words, and will Red Bull be forced to replace him as early as 2025 if they don't win the team championship? With this bad driving from Perez, it's safe to say that Perez has once again gone into a bad period in his career with Red Bull, and the fact that this happened after he just signed a 2-year contract with the team, making the pair of Verstappen and Perez the longest lasting one in the history of the Austrian team, shows that the team does trust him a lot, but he can't show that trust on the track. The crash in Monaco, one that wasn't really his fault other than being at the back of the starting line, caused a huge problem in Red Bull's car improvements, and the latest one in Montreal won't help the Austrian team either. But it doesn't stop here. Perez drove the car in what the race officials called a very dangerous way and got himself a 3-place penalty for the next race in Barcelona. Also, Red Bull had to pay $225,000 for this incident, and people couldn't help but wonder if Perez really deserves 2 years of Red Bull's trust and commitment, now that the racing field is very close at the front and we could be seeing a huge fight in the team championship. McLaren and Ferrari have very good pairs of drivers that are always ready to do well up front if the car is good, and we saw in Montreal that the difference between winning and anything else is very small, which is why Red Bull might have to think twice about whether they want to keep Perez in the team after 2024, let alone until 2026, when talking about the future of the Mexican driver, as well as making Yuki Tsunoda's contract longer at the sister team, who was and still is one of the main people to replace him. Horner went on to say, "They are all Red Bull drivers. We decided to make Perez's contract longer for 1 more year, but at the same time we also wanted to use Yuki's option. He is doing great at the other team right now, so yes, he will stay for another year." As for Perez, 1 + 1 = 2, so it is a 2-year contract. As with any contract, there are all kinds of things in it, but that is of course between the driver and the team. A similar statement was said by Helmut Marko, who went on to say that there are always special rules in the contracts of F1 drivers and their teams, which means that just because Perez's contract says he has to drive for Red Bull until 2026, doesn't mean the team doesn't have the power to use a special rule in the deal that would replace him with another good driver from their group. Obviously, it's not a very good fact to say that you have fewer top 10 qualifying appearances than Alonso, who now has 7, while Perez is still at 6 after the Montreal race, and the fact that both sister team drivers made it to the final part of qualifying is putting more pressure on the Mexican driver to either get better or see himself being replaced in the team to make things worse. Perez has been beaten in qualifying by Sargent twice this year and 5 times over the past 2 seasons in total, while Sargent has been beaten in qualifying by his teammate Albon in every race they've both participated in so far. This puts Perez in a very bad spot, because with such a close field and competitive racing, most of the advantage is gained on Saturday, and if you are further back on the starting grid, you're always making it more likely that you'll be in a crash, something that of course happened to Perez in the last 2 races in Monaco and Montreal. Although the first lap damage in Montreal was not nearly as big as the one in Monaco, it still shows that Perez is costing the team a lot more than they are getting from him at this point, and that is something that needs to change as soon as possible. Red Bull cannot always count on both Ferrari cars crashing out and a win from Verstappen to keep up their good form in both championships, and the fact that McLaren are slowly but surely becoming regular challengers for race wins shows that the pressure on Perez will continue to grow in the rest of 2024. Christian Horner has talked about the future of Perez despite just renewing his contract, and when talking about what happened after the Montreal race, as well as what Perez needs to do to keep his seat safe, the 50-year-old team boss went on to say that was a terrible weekend for Perez, and obviously we got some damage on the first lap, so he will need to come back strong in Barcelona. Thankfully, Ferrari had a really bad race today, so they didn't get any points, but we need both of our cars to score. We got lucky today, but we need Perez back up there where he was at the beginning of the year, right? Away from Barcelona onwards, Barcelona is already going to be a huge problem for Perez because of the 3-place grid penalty, and given his qualifying problems, it would be interesting to see whether or not he has what it takes to get out of the first part of qualifying and break the bad streak. But either way, Red Bull won't be too scared to look at Tsunoda's contract, for example, and see whether a switch could be made to their team, as Tsunoda himself said that he expects more commitment from Red Bull and the sister team if he is to continue with them after 2025. The Japanese driver also talked about having a lot of interest from other teams as well, which shows that Red Bull might see him being taken away, and while that doesn't mean too much right now with the new rules in 2026, Red Bull will definitely need a solid pair of drivers and not just a one-man show that delivers all the results up front. When talking about his dreams with the Austrian team, Yuki Tsunoda went on to say, "I would like to see more commitment from the contract side. Obviously, I am already very committed to Red Bull, and hopefully I can get a bit more commitment from them. This is an ongoing talk, and I want to make sure, first of all, that we are on the same page with Red Bull. Even in these 2 years, Perez still has to perform, and in this kind of situation, anything can happen. The good thing is that other teams are starting to get interested in me. I also got a couple of options from the rest of the grid, which is now growing. It is a good thing that I'm able to grow my value as well, especially in a situation like this and with a very interesting drivers market. The situation is very uncertain in Red Bull, not just because of Perez's struggles despite the contract renewal, but also because the team is having trouble understanding the car as well as they did. In the past 2 years, the only thing that they could have counted on in Montreal as well as in Imola was the Verstappen factor. However, with the huge steps that McLaren and Ferrari have made, this could very well be put under a big challenge, and when you have 2 cars at the front, it's easier to choose a better plan and to put pressure on the 3 world champion when he is at the front. Therefore, while we can criticize Perez for not being nearly as close to Verstappen as he should be, it must also be said that Red Bull does need to work on improvements on the car because of the small working window the car has after the latest upgrades and the new design put on it. Verstappen said this himself. He asked the team to make improvements after the messy Montreal race and stressed out that they cannot always hope for a safety car situation. That helped them this time in the same way that helped McLaren earlier this year in Miami. When talking about this matter, Verstappen went on to say, "We are still struggling with the same things, but of course the track layout helps compared to Monaco, where Monaco has a lot more slow-speed corners, so it's really important to have a good ride and mechanical grip. Here in Montreal, there is more high-speed stuff involved. Of course, there are a few places where you need to ride curbs or have bumpy places, but we know those problems. We just need to work on that." All of this shows that Red Bull and Perez would have to work their way together in trying to save the career of the Mexican driver, because being 5th in the driver championship and under a huge threat to be passed by Piastri will not be good for the Mexican driver's future in the Austrian team. With all this in mind, do you think that Perez has what it takes to bounce back from this negative period? And more importantly, do you think that Red Bull will use the special contract rules in case things get heated in the team championship? Let us know in the comments below what you think. And once you do that, make sure to check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now.